And it is leaving behind a path of destruction after roaring into Georgia as a Category 3 hurricane. Michael knocked out power lines, ripped off roofs, and it left streets flooded.
Tonight, Hurricane Michael has weakened to a tropical storm, but not before claiming the lives of 7 people. One of them, an 11-year-old girl who lived in Seminole County, Georgia, right on the Florida line. More
than 100,000 people in Georgia still do not have any power, but that number was 450,000 this morning as Governor Deal, along with the governors of Florida, Alabama, and the Carolinas, have all declared states of emergency. And it wasn't just the hurricane causing trouble. You're taking a look at the 11 Alive Sky Tracker as it flew over damage in Crawford County from a tornado. A smaller tornado swept through southwest Atlanta near the downtown connector, too.
There is not much left in Mexico Beach, Florida. There are neighborhoods there where most of the foundations are simply wiped clean. Drone video shows us some of the worst damage there from Hurricane Michael. It is so extensive. Look at that, as far as the eye can see.
Unbelievable.